The epic story of Moses, Israel's deliverer. Imagine a time of oppression, a kingdom where the cries of an enslaved people rose to the heavens. Egypt, the world's most powerful nation, thrived on the sweat and tears of the Hebrews who suffered under the Pharaoh's cruel yoke. But just when all hope seemed lost, God was preparing to raise a man who would alter the course of history. This man, Moses, did not begin as a hero. His story started in desperation. The Pharaoh, fearing the growing number of Hebrews, decreed that every newborn Hebrew boy be killed. Yet, amidst this slaughter, a Hebrew mother, driven by faith and love, made a desperate choice. She placed her son in a basket of reeds and set him adrift on the Nile, entrusting his fate to the God of Israel. The baby floated through the waters, with crocodiles lurking nearby and danger ever present. But destiny, or rather, divine providence, intervened. The Pharaoh's daughter, bathing in the river, discovered the basket. Moved with compassion, she decided to raise the child as her own. The boy grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by luxury, power, and knowledge. They named him Moses, meaning drawn out of the water. Yet Moses never forgot who he truly was. Though he lived as a prince, his heart was with his enslaved people. One day, witnessing an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave, something inside him broke. Overcome with rage, Moses killed the Egyptian and fled to the wilderness to escape punishment. For 40 years, he lived humbly as a shepherd in the land of Midian, believing his story was over. But God had other plans. One night, as Moses tended sheep on Mount Horeb, he saw something extraordinary. A bush engulfed in flames, yet not consumed. Curious, he approached, and then he heard the voice of God. "Moses, Moses, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." God revealed that he had heard the cries of his people in Egypt, and that Moses would be the instrument of their deliverance. But Moses, filled with fear and doubt, asked, "Who am I to go before Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God replied, "I will be with you." Thus began an impossible mission. Moses returned to Egypt, accompanied by his brother Aaron. Standing before Pharaoh, Moses boldly declared, "Let my people go." Pharaoh scoffed and hardened his heart, but God would not be ignored. Then came the plagues, each more devastating than the last. The Nile turned to blood, frogs swarmed the land, locusts devoured the crops, and darkness covered Egypt for 3 days. Still, Pharaoh refused to relent. Finally, the 10th and most terrible plague struck, the death of every firstborn. But God gave the Hebrews a way to be spared. They were instructed to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doorframes with its blood. When the angel of death passed through Egypt, the marked homes were spared, while wails of grief echoed from the Egyptians. At last, Pharaoh was broken. He allowed the Hebrews to leave. On the night of their liberation, the first Passover, hundreds of thousands of slaves began their journey to freedom, led by Moses. A pillar of cloud guided them by day and a pillar of fire by night. But their greatest challenge lay ahead. Before them stretched the mighty Red Sea. Behind them thundered Pharaoh's army, who had changed his mind and now pursued them in fury. Terrified, the people cried out to Moses, "Did you bring us here to die in the wilderness?" With unwavering faith, Moses lifted his staff over the sea and declared, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." And then the miracle happened. The waters parted, forming 2 towering walls with a dry path in between. The Hebrews crossed safely, with the waters standing like sentinels on either side. When Pharaoh's army tried to follow, the sea returned to its place, swallowing the soldiers and their chariots. The Israelites celebrated their freedom with songs and dances, recognizing God as their savior and deliverer. Yet Moses' journey was far from over. For 40 years, he led the people through the wilderness, facing trials, rebellions, and hardships, all while trusting in God's promises. On Mount Sinai, Moses received the 10 Commandments, divine laws that would form the foundation of a new nation. Though Moses never entered the Promised Land, his legacy endures as one of the greatest leaders and prophets in history. His life reminds us that even when we doubt ourselves, God can use the weak to accomplish extraordinary things. And so, the story of Moses remains a testament to faith, redemption, and divine purpose. What might God do through you if you trust Him? Thank you for reaching the end. If you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe. That would help me a lot to continue bringing you scriptural content. Blessings.